We're going to do it together. We have to unify, put our petty differences aside, who's more powerful, who has the information, and let's work together in lockstep. You, the people, your stories are fascinating, they're real, they're organic, and they're the truth.
Right now with Ann Vandersteel.
Welcome to this episode, January the 11th, 2024. Right now, I'm your host, Corinne Clifford. I'm live in Washington, D.C. Ann Vandersteel will be back tomorrow. I'm so grateful and so thankful to have this incredible show today. What we're going to talk about today is so relevant because everyone knows, you can feel it, that 2024 could potentially be a very rocky road depending on what happens in the November election cycle. So today I have some really incredible guests, and each one is going to tell you why they are standing up and doing what they're doing. But in the meantime, I want to explain that in Washington, D.C., things are getting wild in Congress, in the House of Representatives. Yesterday, Hunter Biden obviously was asked to come to the House of Representatives. He didn't really talk. He didn't really say anything important, but all the reporters there were saying, hey, what kind of crack do you use, Hunter? Because all of us know it's not fair that he's evading getting subpoenaed to Congress. We're going to go to a break really fast and we'll come back.
In recent years, the world has only become increasingly more chaotic and uncertain. Disruptions to the supply chain have resulted in global food shortages, making it difficult for us to access the very resources we need to live in a functioning society. That's why it is now more important than ever to be prepared for the unexpected. Here at Brighteon and BrighteonStore.com, we've made it our mission to help you and your loved ones be prepared for any emergency, which is why we are dedicated to bringing you a wide selection of ultra-clean and lab-verified superfoods, supplements, preparedness items, and other health products. So support your health and this free speech platform by shopping at BrighteonStore.com today.
My Towels solved a problem that we've all had with towels. You go into the stores and they feel lotiony and soft, but then you get them home and they wind dry you. That's why I made My Towels. They actually work, they're soft, and they absorb. And now I'm excited to announce 2 brand new lines of My Towels. What makes them the best towels ever is they're now made with 100% long staple Shapir cotton. This is a combed ring spun cotton that makes My Towels even softer and more absorbent than ever. And now you get a 6-piece set for an amazing introductory sale price as low as $29.98. So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to get My Towels for only $29.98. Or you can get my designer premium line for just $20 more. Either way, you save 50% now on all My Towels. They actually work. What a concept. This offer won't last long, so please order now.
MyPillow.com.
It is January the 11th, 2024. Welcome to this new year that promises to be a wild ride. I want to start off with some very interesting footage that I took myself in Washington, D.C. on Saturday, January 6th. Let's play this footage and then I'll explain it to you. So this is footage that I find to be very relevant because this is a rally that happened in Washington, D.C., right outside the DOJ for January 6th, 2024, 3 years after January 6th, 2021 happened at the U.S. Capitol. That means that in the last 3 years, American patriots actually still care about what's happening in Washington, D.C. and in the world. People are still getting arrested. It's been pretty much one a day for the last 3 years for what did or did not happen on January 6, 2021 at the U.S. Capitol. The mother of Ashley Babbitt hosted this rally, which ended up being a march down Pennsylvania Avenue to the U.S. Capitol to actually place flowers on the U.S. Capitol, where her daughter was brutally murdered by Washington, D.C. and U.S. Capitol Police on January 6, 2021. This really segues into the fact that all across America on January 6th this year, there were protests, rallies, marches in honor of justice for January 6th. Now, this means that many people in the United States of America are calling on January 6th to become an official holiday for the independence of American patriots. And that's why the show that we have today is so relevant and so important. I'm going to have on this show all military, current military and ex-military guests. It's so relevant because as of January 1st, they just publicly introduced a declaration of military accountability, which is so relevant because there's actually over 231 people who signed this, who are American patriots standing up, drawing a line in the sand and saying they are not going to allow the military or anyone really in the United States of America to do things that are unaccountable and unconstitutional. So welcome to this episode of Right Now. I'm your host, Corinne Clifford, and Vandersteel will be back with you tomorrow. I want to introduce all of our guests. Right now, we have one of the original signers of this declaration. This is Brad Miller. We also have Doc Chambers, and we have a couple other people that I'll introduce. But I want to start this with Brad Miller. Brad, why did you sign this? What inspired you to draft this declaration?
Yeah, so first of all, thanks so much for having us on, Corinne. Really happy to be here. So I myself am a military veteran. I served for 19 years of active service. Before that, I spent 4 years at West Point. I resigned from military service over the unlawful mandate because what I saw happening was military leaders were breaking the law. They were violating their oaths to the Constitution. They were trampling constitutionally protected rights that, yes, service members retain even upon entering the service. And what I saw to me was despicable. And so when a core of us got together and we had this document that had been drafted by a currently serving member in the Navy, Rob Green, a good friend of ours, we decided that, yes, an open letter to the American public would be a great way to appeal to those out there who, like you said in your intro, they just know that this is going to be a big year. They know that things are bad in our country. They're headed in the wrong direction, and it's time for Americans to stand up and move things in the direction that they should be moving.
That's really powerful. Doc, tell us everything.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for having us. Look, first, for context, I'm going to explain a little bit. I'm a soldier. I've been a soldier for a long time. Ronald Reagan was the president when I came in. I've done every possible job you could think of, and I know what it takes to be a soldier, a leader. I know what it takes to lead the soldiers in combat. I know what it takes to take care of soldiers, and that will bring me to the most important point here, my last job in the military, and the most fulfilling job, protecting our southern border. The largest deployment of troops on the United States, continental United States, since the Spanish-American War. And it's important to understand that my job as task force surgeon was the responsibility of the health and well-being of those troops, as well as special staff to the commanders above me. At the task force, I only had one commander above me, and then it went directly to the state, the commander-in-chief of the state, which would be the governor. So that would be the state of Texas. So I'm a great guy. I love to hang out with my troops. I heard Brad say something like this once, but we're serious people doing a serious job. And when I saw soldiers that were going down, and I'm talking about my first case, and I'll talk about a couple others, 27-year-old myocarditis, pericarditis. He's currently out of the military with the heart of a patient who has congestive heart failure. And this was after receiving the jabs. Another patient, 30 years old, stroke, currently going through speech rehab. I had to explain this to their families. See, we see those people. They're at our level, at the tactical level. So why did I sign this? Because this letter, this declaration represents an apolitical, constitutionally sound shot across the bow against the woke ideology, illegalities of a mandate that was not legal. We can go into details of that, but right now, that's the reason why I signed this, and this is the most important point.
That's really powerful. Mark, I want to introduce Mark Bashow. Mark, what do you have to say about why you're an original signer of this declaration?
Yeah, so I served 17 and a half years, former Master Sergeant, U.S. Air Force, and a first lieutenant at the U.S. Army as a public health officer stationed at the Army Public Health Center from January 2020 to June 2023. I was a whistleblower there. I ultimately got sent to a court-martial, convicted in a court-martial, given no punishment, and the judge recommended to the commanding general to drop everything. Hint, hint, he's a whistleblower, a protected communicator, in which the command went on to retaliate against me further, threatened me with Leavenworth imprisonment, threatened my family, escorted me to behavioral health appointments. I did everything in my power to internally redress my grievances to no avail, and that's exactly why I signed this declaration of military accountability for the lawlessness that's happened the past 3 years.
That's really powerful. I want to introduce Brianna Cespedes. Did I say your last name correctly?
Yes, Cespedes.
Cespedes. Why are you an original signer of this document?
Yeah, so my family, we come from Cuba and Mexico, and ultimately, I know what it's like to not have the values and the principles that are in the U.S. Constitution, because we saw that taken away from my family just 2 generations ago. So I came into the military, joined the Air Force as enlisted, and I did almost 5 years of service until the point that they actually kicked me out of the military. So I just wanted to serve and to defend the Constitution. And when it came to the COVID mandate and all of the changes that I had seen in the military, I could not go along with it anymore. So after they had quarantined me over 140 days, they had suppressed me, they had threatened me with dishonorable discharge. Ultimately, I was kicked out, and now I'm an involuntary veteran. That's why I have that title, because I didn't choose to become one. And I got to join this group of 231 signers because ultimately, we're defending the principles of the Constitution, and we have exhausted all internal efforts, and now we're looking to really say, hey, look, accountability needs to happen. We're at the last line of defense. This has to happen now.
So, Brad, what do you really want to see happen? What do you all really want to happen? Tell us exactly.
Yeah, so I typically talk about this in terms of 3 things. One is acknowledgement. The second is accountability, and the third is restitution or restoration of some type. So when I say acknowledgement, what do I mean? Principally, I mean 2 things. Acknowledgement that this mandate was unlawful, which it clearly was, and then second, that it was harmful. It was harmful physically, it was harmful morally to our troops, etc. Now, again, when something is unlawful and crimes are committed, that takes us to our next idea. If crimes are committed, people have to be held to account for those crimes that were committed. If there's not accountability, there's no way for us to ensure that this doesn't happen again. There's no way for us to get our military back online, directed towards that ultimate framework, which is the Constitution, which is our nation of laws, and even the military regulations themselves. And then that third point that I mentioned was restitution or restoration, which is for those who have been harmed, whether they were harmed physically, whether they were harmed morally, whether their careers were ruined, whether they were separated against their will, like Brianna just mentioned in her case, and many others. Those individuals should be restored at least in as much as possible. For example, right now, it is hard for individuals who have been harmed by these shots to get the treatment that they need because military doctors are hesitant to mark injuries as being a result of the shots. So if you can't identify the cause of an injury that has been suffered because you're afraid your career will suffer if you tell someone that they've been injured by the shots, then how are they going to get the treatment that they need? I just use that as one example, but just kind of to go back to your question, yeah, what we're looking for is a broad acknowledgement of what has happened, and that's going to require, investigations into this, and then accountability for those who have committed crimes against service members, against their families, etc., and then restitution, or that attempt to try and restore those who have been harmed in as much as it is even possible.
What do you have to say, Doc?
Right. You know, much like Brad, I break these things down into three categories, and for me, it's where my focus is, my lines of effort to move this forward, so we can reinstill the trust, because trust is very important to us. And I look at the commanders that are currently at the Pentagon, all the way down to combatant commanders and to the tactical level. Those commanders, it behooves them to do the right thing right now, to pivot off of this mindset, to get away from personal concern and go to Army value number 7, personal courage. That's number one. The other thing that I want to look at is those that have been damaged morally and physically by these jabs, by these woke programs. We have to, those of us in uniform. I'd still be on the border right now. I love the military. That's all I know. But that's, you know, this isn't about me right now. This is about the whole. And then there's those others that sit and look at me and say, hey, where are the white hats, right? And we talk about these things and we hear it all the time. We are the white hats, right? You, me, we the people are the white hats. And Mark Bashaw does a wonderful, I've heard him speak a few times. He's the Thomas Paine of this group. And he does a really good job. But we have to get the commanders and all those on the Hill, our legislators, to quit opining and wasting precious time focusing on things that absolutely do not matter. This is a hemorrhage by 1,000 tiny cuts, and until we get a tourniquet on it, we'll continue to bleed the ranks.
That's powerful. Mark, what do you have to say?
We are the white hats, and the fact that we have to continue forth in speaking truth to power. We live in a constitutional republic, and for those service members out there, the only legitimate contract you have is your oath of office, is your oath of enlistment. It's signed between you and another officer within the executive branch, and that's to support and defend the Constitution against for the United States against enemies foreign and domestic. And so if you receive unlawful orders, it's your job to defy, but not only defy, but properly communicate that up your chain of command to perform a redress. And for the people out there looking for what they can do, it's a republic if you can keep it. And you can't keep it sitting on your couch at home eating popcorn. You must stand upon your unalienable God-given rights and put your public servants on notice.
That's really inspirational. Okay, what do you think, Brianna?
I think that this is honestly the beauty of being an American. I mean, we're going back to our principles of we're taking this into our own hands and we're saying our politicians are not doing anything. The past National Defense Authorization Act did not include just the basic asks that we had, basic amendments like let's upgrade discharges. I have a general discharge. I don't have access to the GI Bill. I can't go to school, right? A lot of people were kicked out for this. We have over 8,500 active duty. We have 80,000 reserves and National Guard. So many have been affected by this mandate. And that's why this letter was so inspirational to me personally, because I saw literally America. I saw the Constitution coming to life and people saying, hey, we are going to literally run for office. We are going to change the policies ourselves because our politicians are refusing to act.
Brad, tell us about some of the people running for office that signed this.
Yeah, you got quite a few. But let me explain why that's so significant, you know? So when you look at what has happened over the last couple of years, and you look at constitutional rights that were absolutely trampled, and like Mark just said, you know, when you live in a constitutional republic, and particularly when you put on the uniform to defend that constitutional republic, there's not much more important than that oath that you take. And so what we have seen is the entire military over the last couple of years went through, in some ways, the toughest test that people were going to face in their military career. And so for some individuals, maybe not everybody, but for some individuals, their toughest test of their military career wasn't necessarily going to happen on some foreign soil, you know, in a firefight. It was going to happen here at home. And it wasn't necessarily going to be a tactical fight. It was going to be a moral fight. And unfortunately, many people in our military were unprepared for that. But for those who came through this fight on the right side, they went through what I call a constitutional crucible. And when they went through that constitutional crucible, they proved that under immense duress and under having immense coercion, perhaps perpetrated against them, they still stood strong and they held strong to their oath. And now some of those individuals are running for office. So they held strong, kept their oath, came out of the military, put their names on this document, and now several of them are running for office. Now, when we say that, we do have to make clear that this document is entirely apolitical and it is nonpartisan because it is grounded explicitly in the Constitution, the law, and then military regulations, because we maintain that senior officials were actually violating the military's own regulations. And when you read the Declaration of Military Accountability, and it's only a one-pager, and I urge everybody to go to militaryaccountability.com and find the declaration and read it. In fact, read it out loud to yourself, and you're going to see that this thing is read in a voice that makes particular mention of the founding period, specifically the Declaration of Independence. Now, we're not trying to, necessarily separate ourselves from our country, but we are drawing a very clear and definitive historical link to those who came before us that set up this system of government. Because our problem is not with the system of government per se, it is with those in power that have perverted it. And so, yeah, we are looking for those who have made it through this constitutional crisis. They're still looking to continue to serve.
Doc, what do you think?
Well, I like what Brad said. It's a crucible, and that's a pinnacle event. And what that looks like for me, I'm just going to explain it to help people at the tactical level, at the ground level, to understand. It's when a soldier like me has to say to a general, "No, sir, that's an unlawful order." Now, that's a moment of truth, and that happens very rarely. I had 39 years in uniform, active guard and reserves, where I never had to cross that. I never had to deal with that. But with that comes a cost. And right now we're at that phase. Some people have paid a lot more than myself. Mark Bashaw, he was court-martialed. With that, there's a cost, but that's what sets our spurs in the sand, if you will, in this line that's standing in front of us.
That's powerful. What do you have to say, Mark?
Well, ironically, going back to one of the signers of this declaration, he's a candidate in the 7th District of Virginia, Cameron Hamilton. He's running against Yevgeny Vindman, a retired colonel. Ironically, Yevgeny Vindman was the staff judge advocate that sent me to a court-martial after I submitted protected communications to my chain of command. Ironically, he's also the twin brother of Alexander Vindman, the fake whistleblower from the Trump White House that with the Ukraine call. And so that's what we see here in the military. You see individuals who weren't willing to stand up for their oaths of office and instead throw service members, protected communicators, medical officers under the bus and completely run them over, and then use that as a political stepping stool. And then you have individuals of integrity and character and moral courage standing upon the foundations in which they swore an oath to defend.
That's so interesting. Brianna, we have 90 seconds. What do you think?
I just want to say, we're people that take our oath seriously to the Constitution. When my commander was discharging me, he told me he did not want to do it. And ultimately, we've had leaders that have been willing to compromise, and that's what this letter is all about. The accountability letter, we're saying we are no longer willing to compromise, and those leaders that have are not going to get away with it. So ultimately, if people want to get involved, if they want to support as well, go online to militaryaccountability.com. You can sign the petition and join us in this as well and share. Please do that.
Brad, was it hard for you to find people to come and sign this? Did you want more people to sign it? Tell us about that really fast.
No, I think 231 is sufficient because just like Brianna said, there is a petition which is associated with this that anybody can sign. You do not have to be military. You do not have to be a vet. And so the word is getting out. We knew that this was going to be big. We knew we had to roll it out on January 1st. We didn't know that it was going to be this big. So I think we have a sufficient number of people that have shown their integrity and courage. And now we're just looking for others to kind of, join us shoulder to shoulder. And, let's keep moving forward.
Doc, are you running for public office, and do you want to publicize what's happening on January 29th in Texas?
Hard for me not to laugh. No, I'm not running for office. I would be a sheriff one day, but right now I'm busy on the border. But I will support each and every one of these, and I will continue to. One of our friends, Mara Macy, she's up there. Of course, Cameron Hamilton. We will support him, and we'll help him out from the border as much as we can.
Or do you want to publicize anything that's happening at the border in the next couple months?
complete mayhem. But we'll control the controllables. I feel positive.
I mean, do you feel like the Governor Abbott or any governor is going to actually close the border?
No, ma'am. It's going to be we the people.
Wow. And what happens when you actually try to do anything? Can they arrest you?
No, we're operating legally, morally, ethically. We're finding and fixing, and we're securing locations for or land for owners. But we're not going hands on. We don't have the authorities for that.
I mean, what we're finding is that huge charity groups that we thought were normal are actually getting billions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars from the federal government to encourage the migrants to come across the border, the illegal alien migrants. So it's very interesting.
An example of the moral injury at the top levels. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So, I mean, basically, we, the taxpayers, are paying for these migrants to come across the border.
Yeah, it's a sickness that goes all the way across the institutions. That's why we're focusing on ours.
So shocking. So I'm going to we're going to go to a break right now, and we'll be right back.
My towels solved a problem that we've all had with towels. You go into the stores and they feel lotiony and soft, but then you get them home and they wind dry you. That's why I made my towels. They actually work, they're soft, and they absorb. And now I'm excited to announce 2 brand new lines of my towels. What makes them the best towels ever is they're now made with 100% long staple Shapir cotton. This is a combed ring spun cotton that makes my towels even softer and more absorbent than ever. And now you get a 6-piece set for an amazing introductory sale price as low as $29.98. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to get my towels for only $29.98. Or you can get my designer premium line for just $20 more. Either way, you save 50% now on all my towels. They actually work. What a concept. This offer won't last long, so please order now.
mypillow.com. If you don't want to eat GMOs and pesticides in your storable food, choose organic, lab-tested storable food solutions from the Health Ranger store. We are the only emergency food manufacturer in the world that subjects each of our ingredients to rigorous laboratory testing that covers herbicides, heavy metals, aflatoxins, identity testing, and bacteria tests, including E. coli, salmonella, yeast, and mold. At healthrangerstore.com, you'll find certified organic, lab-tested, freeze-dried fruits, microalgae superfoods, protein powders, and supplements. We offer emergency first aid colloidal silver products made with Texas rainwater, and our Ranger buckets feature an impressive assortment of organic storable food items professionally vacuum sealed in heavy-duty bags that are stacked in rugged buckets for long-term storage. Check out our preparedness foods, supplements, personal care, and emergency first aid products at healthrangerstore.com.
Freedom of speech is a basic human right that has been hard-won and granted to all law-abiding Americans. As such, we should not take our freedom of speech and expression for granted. This is more important now than ever before, since world governments and the mainstream media often try to suppress those whose opinions differ from the so-called official narrative. Here at BrighteonStore.com, we are dedicated to fighting for every American's right to speak their mind without the fear of censorship or suppression. That's why every purchase you make at BrighteonStore.com supports our pro-liberty video sharing platform, Brighteon.com, so we can keep bringing you all the latest unrestricted videos mainstream media doesn't want you to see. Support your health and this free speech platform by shopping at BrighteonStore.com today.
SAT123.com. They have put together a really incredible package: emergency backup communication systems, power systems. We've got sat phones, we've got solar panels, and also the big 400-watt solar panel behind us there. And why does this matter? Because, of course, right now we are dealing with massive risk of blackouts. And the power grid is just failing, intermittently, but it's going to get worse because we've also got energy shortages. Think about the lack of coal power, the diesel problems that are happening right now. If you're in the military or the National Guard or Border Patrol or law enforcement, and you need to be able to function even when the power grid goes down, or maybe you're a first responder, rescue team, firefighter, paramedic, you name it, You need to know about this equipment. So SAT123.com, folks.
Many of you have been asking, where am I getting the energy from? Where is the glow coming from? What's changed with your hair and skin? Well, simply in the last month, I started taking a product, C60 Evo. If you go to c60evo.com/Ann Vandersteel, you too can get radiant energy, mental focus with C60 Evo's ESS 60. What is it? That is pure C60. Get that increased flexibility, immunity, and longevity. And guess what, folks? It's not only for people too. You can get some for your pets. My animals are on it now. And that's right, I'm having trouble keeping up with Vegas, my dog, who I like to go on long walks with in the morning. He is battling back on the heat down here with his C60 Evo as well. Go to c60evo.com/Ann Vandersteel and try their delicious oils that you can eat and add into salads or put on your food, and also incredible facial serums and creams that are making a massive difference in the texture and feel of my skin. c60evo.com/Ann Vandersteel.
Welcome back to the January 11th, 2024 episode of Right Now. I'm your host, Corinne Clifford. Ann Vandersteel will be back tomorrow. I'm live from Washington, D.C. with several of the original signers of the Declaration of Military Accountability. I want to introduce Caroline Rocco. She's currently in the military, and she's currently in Washington, D.C., testifying to Congress. How are you, Caroline?
Hi, good. Thank you for having me on. I do need to make a quick correction, though. I'm not testifying. I'm just a witness to the testimony. So I am one of the 231 signers, and I signed this primarily because I see hurt airmen, right? When you read the Declaration, you will see that we are pursuing restoration through accountability. And if we can start restoring and making whole these airmen, soldiers, Marines, and sailors, then I feel like that is my primary role in this effort moving forward. I am up here in DC to talk to a couple congressmen, but ironically, Matt Lohmeyer, who was a Space Force commander, was fired a couple years ago, and he testified in today's hearing titled "The Risks of Progressive Ideologies in the U.S. Military." And I only bring that to this conversation because during this testimony, Congressman Andy Biggs, actually submitted for the congressional record our Declaration of Military Accountability. So this is now a formal document within the congressional hands. So that's my story for right now.
That's really powerful. I also want to introduce Grant Smith. Grant, how are you today?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Tell us about why you're one of the original signers.
So, as Brad mentioned, Commander Rob Green had drafted this document and asked for feedback from a group of friends, and I was very honored to be a part of that group. And upon reading it and looking at the final version, I didn't have an option not to sign it. I was compelled to by the oath I took to the Constitution. So we've all talked a little bit about, the oath to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. But right after that, there's a part that says that I'll bear true faith and allegiance to the same. And so from my perspective as an officer, the law was clearly broken. And I brought that up to my chain of command, as many of us did. If there's no accountability for this egregious violation of the law and trampling on the constitutional rights of service members, then the Constitution's a dead letter. And I can't accept that because I swore that I had faith in this document. So I'm obligated to do whatever I can, whatever's within my power, legally, morally, and ethically, to pursue accountability for this violation of the Constitution. And that's what the letter says. And so I felt obligated by the oath I took to sign it and participate with the other 230 signatories.
Have you received any persecution or prosecution from the U.S. military for signing this?
No, and I don't anticipate that we will, because I don't think that they can afford to draw attention to this issue. Because the fact of the matter is that they did break the law. It is very straightforward. An EUA, emergency use authorized vaccine, was the one that was available. You cannot mandate that without a presidential order and signature, which they did not have. And so they pretended, and in often case lied outright, and said they had a fully FDA approved and licensed product, which you can mandate by law, and they didn't. It was an emergency use authorized product. And so that foundation of the vaccine mandate made all the subsequent coercion illegal and a violation of constitutional rights. And that's not even to get into the infringements on religious liberty and religious freedom that resulted in the COVID context, not allowing service members to go to indoor church gatherings, et cetera.
I mean, Doc, what do you have to say? Oh, we're having technical difficulties with Doc. Can you hear us, Doc? Okay,
Yeah,
David.
the technical difficulty was I had my house self-muted. So in following these courageous veterans that were active duty folks, I'm going to say this. It takes a lot. It takes a lot because there is a cost, and I talked about this before, but the actions that caused us, these reactions, caused irreparable harm in the trust, and I'm reading from the document, of the armed forces and the institutions which they have fought, we have fought and bled. And the hemorrhage is moral injury. And that's from Brad Miller's Substack, and that's where I first understood who he was by reading that. And I really, was happy to meet him in person and get on this. There was no doubt that we were going to sign, because the word hemorrhage to me implies something that all bleeding eventually stops. We say that in the combat medicine arena, and it's whether I put my hand on the bleed or they bleed out. Right now, in my estimate, as a combat trauma surgeon, my opinion is that if we don't get a tourniquet on this thing, we're not going to get anywhere near definitive care. And that is what this does. This is that shot across the bow, wake up, and then now we will hold people accountable. And I believe because it's entered in the record now, it's official, and that's important.
I mean, David, how do you specifically want to hold people accountable in the military specifically?
Was that directed to me? So let me explain something real quick. So we have this term called moral injury that we've used a couple of times now. So moral injury, very simply stated, is when your actions don't accord with your own moral code. Okay, so very simply, we could think of an example where you do something you know is wrong and you feel guilty about it. That is a type of moral injury. So now let's expand that out. So you take an organization like the military, which has a very clear ethos, has a very clear culture, also has a very clear system of values and virtues. So then what happens when you, the service member, see the organization, and particularly the officials at the top of the organization, which are acting in clear opposition to the organization's stated moral code? That kind of resulting disjuncture that you feel within yourself where this doesn't quite make sense, that is moral injury. And so what Doc is saying and what I am saying is that we have a force that is not just physically injured because of the effects of these shots, but also morally injured. And I would say to some degree, the moral injury actually extends beyond the physical injury, because there are plenty of people who are morally injured that are not necessarily physically injured. Another point that I would like to make clear is, let's look at it this way, just so we can understand the scope of the problem. Across the active duty armed forces, you have billets for approximately 600 generals and admirals, whether they be one-star generals or admirals, or whether they be four-star generals and admirals. So the military, our active duty forces, is led by these 600 or so senior officers. Let me remind everyone that every single one of these individuals went along with the unlawful activities that have occurred over the last 3 years. Or stated another way, there is not a single one of those roughly 600 individuals that resisted the unlawful activity in any meaningful way, because if they had, they would have been shown the door. So when we look at our leaders Over the last couple of years, they kept quiet while the organization was perpetrating physical and moral injury on its own service members and their families. They kept quiet while the Constitution was being willfully violated by those who had ostensibly taken an oath to it. They kept quiet while injuries began to spike, while deaths began to spike, and they didn't even care to investigate what the potential causes of those injuries and deaths might be. They kept quiet for multiple years, but guess who's not keeping quiet? That's us.
That's so powerful. Caroline, what do you have to say? You're sitting in Congress right now.
Yeah, no true words have been spoken from anybody other than Brad here. And as he mentioned in the first segment, we do have to give credit where credit is due. And Rob Green is definitely the mastermind behind putting these words on paper. It was a joint effort in getting it out and spreading the word. But a man of faith, a man who is committed to upholding the Constitution, his oath to the Constitution. And so I agree with Brad to the extent of the hurt airmen, whether they're physically and or morally, they are crying out to the 231 signatories on that declaration, right? They're crying out to us, asking for help, looking for leaders who know what right looks like and are actually going to walk the talk. And so I'm a big fan of, hey, be the change you want to see. I'm not one who's just going to bitch about it on the couch. If there's a problem, what can I do to affect my sphere of influence, right? Impact those who are around me. And if it has a bigger influence, then great. But it's going to take all of us to have that courage to stand up and to engage. Local, as you probably have heard, local action has national impact, and it's going to take all of us to get involved in whatever situation or topic that is most important to that individual. And for us, it's upholding the Constitution, doing what's right, doing what's lawful, and getting our military back to what it was founded on.
Yeah. Grant, what do you have to say?
So I want to just comment on the strategic aspect of this, because a lot of people in the military, they look at what we're doing and the reflexive reaction is, hey, that's not going to make a difference. Look, this is a tiny group of people. It's 230 people. That's no big deal. Oh, they're going to, bring people back and court-martial them. It's never going to happen. That would take service secretaries to come in. And, first of all, if that's what our oath obligates us to do, then that's what we have to try and pursue. So that's the first thing. The second thing is strategically, the reason why I think this has the potential to be effective is it introduces risk. So commanders at echelon are very concerned about managing risk. And right now, there is a pervasive sense that there is no risk whatsoever in violating the constitutional rights of service members and American citizens in any context. That there's no way that there's ever going to be accountability for doing that, especially when you're doing something that is politically expedient. So in the case of the COVID vaccine mandate context, the boss, the Secretary of Defense had an order that made it clear that, hey, everybody's got to get in line and they got to execute this. And people started getting evaluated based on the percentage of people in their formations that were able to get vaccinated, getting favorable evaluations based on that metric. And why wouldn't you do that? If you are convinced in this utilitarian consequentialist mindset where the ends justify the means. Hey, we're going to save lives by doing this. I disagree with that, but a lot of people believe that at the time. Well, it doesn't matter because the law is the law, the Constitution is the Constitution, and you can always try and justify means that are unlawful and unethical and immoral, and say that they're not any of those things because the ends, hey, we're trying to do this good thing. And then when that good thing doesn't end up happening, and we look at some of the data in the Defense Medical Epidemiological Database that indicates that there's been some injuries, then, oh, well, we did the best that we could at the time. And no, that's not how the law works. It's not how the Constitution works. There's a reason that we have these rules and regulations, and there's a reason that we have the Constitution, and there's a reason that we as service members swear an oath to that document, is because it comes first. It's because the means are the most important thing, because we don't know what the ends will be until we get there. So I just wanted to comment on that because comes back into the strategy. We don't know if we're going to be successful in holding anybody accountable, but we do know, or we ought to know, that we're obligated to do everything within our power to try.
I mean, Doc, I have a really controversial question to ask you. Do you think that if we enter into World War III, starting in June of 2024, do you think our U.S. military could stand up and handle it after they've been vaccinated with this COVID-19 death shot?
Well, I don't know that the death shot would be the reason. I think that right now what I would focus on is understanding that military readiness, which we proved on the border that you didn't have to have a vaccine in order to do it. That's why I testified to in Seals versus Lloyd Austin. We did it, with lesser intrusive means, which was called preventative medicine. Everybody was fine until the mandate came along. But the question of whether we could handle World War III, it depends on what that looked like. But I'll use the example of a war on two fronts. I don't believe right now that I know that Americans, we, the people, Americans can handle that. Definitely if you bring in some Texans with you, and that's just a joke, but we know we can do that. We've been sucker punched before as Americans, and we know that we can rise to the occasion. But right now we'd have a straight uphill battle if we were to go into that right now. It's just because the recruiting is abysmal, retention is non-existent, and the trust has to be repaired. That hemorrhage has caused hemorrhage of trust as well. And in order to follow people in combat, you've got to trust your leaders.
What do you have to say, Caroline? What do you think?
I'm actually probably not going to comment too much on that question. I live while planning and strategic planning is important, and that's part of our military mission set. I'm not going to pretend I have a crystal ball. I mean, things have changed so drastically in just 10 days. That to try to predict what's going to happen in June or subsequent months. At the end of the day, the bigger question should be, what can we do now? What can we do today? And that's going to take trust. It's going to take hope, empathy, courage. I think one of the big takeaways while we're aggressive and we're going on the offensive to hold these people accountable, we also have to have empathy, and we have to have mercy, and we have to have grace. And there are many people, believe it or not, who still are not aware of what has transpired the last 2 to 3 years. And so we are not going to win them in our good graces and get them on our side to help us fight this enduring fight, because I do think it's going to take quite some time. So we've just got to extend our arms to them, love them, listen to them, and then educate them. And I think once everybody is able to humble themselves, actually listen to what happened, without a doubt, I think we're going to have more on our side, maybe within the next 2 days. Who knows? We'll see what that petition number shows, in the next week or two.
So Grant, what are your parting words? What do you really want America to know?
Just that everything's uncertain. Where we're going to be at, what's going to happen, that takes up a lot of the focus. A lot of us were told, I know that I was told, hey, there's no way you're going to get an accommodation for this. If you don't get this shot, you're going to kick that. And I'm still here. So you don't know what's going to happen, but you can control your behavior. And if you know what the right thing to do is, even if you think it's very unlikely that you're going to be successful doing that right thing, you're obligated to do that right thing. Or like Brad was saying, you're going to incur a moral injury. And we have this new program in the Army called Holistic Health and Fitness. And one of the domains, and that's what I do in the Army, I'm working on implementing that program. One of the domains is the spiritual domain. And that domain is about knowing what your purpose is. Why are you here in this world? And making sure that your behaviors align with that purpose. And that gives life meaning, whatever it is, whatever your purpose is. You have to know what it is, and you got to be taking actions that are aligned with that. And if we have just you as an individual citizen, or if you're in the military, in the military specifically, we take an oath to the Constitution. So if your behaviors aren't aligned with supporting and defending the Constitution, you're not going to perform at your best. And you're going to be able to get a lot more out of life if you align that way. If you focus on, hey, what can I do to align with my purpose? What is it? What do I need to do to get there? And by focusing on that, you can focus on your behavior, which you have control over, and not waste time worrying about what the outcome is, because none of us are in a position to control the outcome.
David, what's your parting words to us?
So I might go back to what you said before, where you asked, hey, if a large war were to occur, would we be prepared? Instead of trying to predict whether or not we would be prepared, I might just take that question and reframe it slightly. And I might say, well, let's look at it this way. Are we more or less healthy as a military? Or are we more or less ready as a military than we were 3 years ago? And I'm not talking about whatever COVID is or isn't. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the mandate for the shots that was unlawful, harmful. I'm talking about the other things that have happened in the military over the last couple of years. So we got to ask ourselves, over the last couple of years as a military, have we been moving in the right direction towards a healthy and ready force that can adequately defend the United States and provide optimal security, or have we been moving away from that objective? And I think we all know the answer. And so what we are dedicated to do, and the reason that we have written this open letter to pledge to the American public that we are going to do what we can to try and put our own house in order as those that are part of the greater military community, we have to do that through accountability and then moving forward in the right direction, putting ourselves more properly in line with the Constitution, in line with existing laws and military regulations. The framework already exists, but we've been outside it for so long, we got to get back inside of it.
Okay, Doc, we have 60 seconds. What do you want to say in 60 seconds?
Well, right now we're at the call to action phase. So what I would say is to everybody listening out there to get on and sign the petition, number one, and understand this, that I'm calling on you in the name of liberty and patriotism and everything that's dear to the American character to come to our aid, we the people, with all dispatch.
That is so powerful. I really want to tell people out there that on the 29th of January, things are beginning. TakeOurBorderBack.com. TakeOurBorderBack.com. On February 3rd, 3 events will be happening. You guys can all text me 917-287-1314. I will tell you exactly about events that are coming up. This may be one of my last shows with the Brighteon Network, but I'm so grateful and so thankful. I want to thank all y'all for being on this show. This is one of the most powerful shows I've ever done in my entire life. But if you want to follow my journalism, please text me 24/7. If you're a whistleblower or if you have a story that you think the public needs to know, my number is 917-287-1314. I want to thank you, Doc. You are a leader. I want to thank you, Caroline. You are a leader. I want to thank you, Grant. You're a leader. And David, you have 30 seconds. Tell us everything in 30 seconds.
So again, I just want to reiterate, if you go to militaryaccountability.com, you're going to find 3 things there. One, you're going to find the Declaration of Military Accountability. Beneath that, you will find pages of the names of the 231 signatories that courageously put their names on that document. And then, perhaps most importantly, you will find an associated petition. Read that petition if you agree with it. Sign it, share it. Let's get involved. When you live in a republic as a citizen, you got to be informed, active, and engaged.
So grateful. God bless you. Thank you, Doc. Thank you, Caroline. Thank you, Grant. Thank you, David. Have a beautiful week. God bless you.